Yeah.
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Anytime, let's stick with the same time every week if we can, but you can always bring us on anytime you need us. We're happy to help.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay. As soon as he gives me the thumbs up, here we go. All right. Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now from texasfootball.com, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. It's Travis Stewart. How you doing, Travis?
I'm good, Bryan. Thanks for having us this morning.
Hey, loving it, and very excited to announce we're going to be doing this segment every Wednesday, and so we're very excited about being able to announce that as well. I wanted to talk to you, first of all, about some things that were on the website. You guys wrote a very interesting article this week about John Tyler winning the Red Bull Game Breakers National 7-on-7 tournament over the weekend, and I wanted to get your take on what you think of this John Tyler team this year.
Well, we know they're going to be pretty good, especially offensively. When you look down the roster, it's rare you find a team anywhere that has as much talent at the skill spots and can translate that to on-the-field success like they had last year. I mean, John Tyler fans, they're well accustomed to what Cujo looks like. They've always had talented skill kids, but this year is pretty special with Greg Ward at quarterback. I mean, statistically, one of the best in the state, and then you can just watch him, you can tell that matches up to the numbers. Over 70% completion percentage last year on his passes, which in high school is just really uncommon because so many things have to happen to get you at that level. I mean, obviously you have to have a firm grasp of the offense, which Ward obviously does. You have to have receivers who are not going to drop the ball. I mean, that happens all the time in high school football. It's high school kids, for goodness sake. And then everyone has to be on the same page at the same time when they read the defense. When all three of those things come together at the high school level, that's really tough to beat. They've got two college-caliber wide receivers. They've got a pretty good running back in Gibson. And then their defense has more than enough talent. Linebacker, defensive end with Tyus Bowser. They've got a lot of kids there. The trick is, can they get over the hump? I mean, we know they're talented, but there's always 3 or 4 or 5 really talented teams in Class 4A every year. So it's just, can you be the one that maybe gets lucky bounce the ball, maybe the one that stays healthy, or maybe just catch the teams at the right time? That's something you never know until the end of the season. But just looking on paper and based on what we know from last year, this is one of the best Tyler products I think I've seen.
Now, when you're going back to Greg Ward just a few minutes ago, and he's got some unbelievable numbers, and he's committed to the University of Houston, and it looks like they're going to try to make a wide receiver out of him. I mean, how tempted would you be to leave that kid at quarterback and see what he could do, even though he's only 5'10"?
There's a reason I'm in writing, not in coaching, but I would say once he's on campus, I think you'd almost have to at least put him under center a couple times in some practices and just give him a few runs. You never know what you're going to find. Drew Tate was a super successful college quarterback. We can all agree on that.
Yep.
Well, he wasn't very big either. Drew Brees was a super successful college quarterback and obviously a very good pro quarterback, and he ain't very big either. So I think it's worth at least sticking him under center, running him through skeleton a few times. And you know what? If it's just not good, or if he's not able to see over the lineman, which is why a lot of short quarterbacks are sheltered into other positions, if he doesn't fit those roles, then try him at wide receiver, and you've lost absolutely nothing. And I'm sure Ward is happy too because he at least got a crack at it. But why wouldn't you at least try? I know you've got some big bodies, some 6'4", 6'5" kids of the Brom Kohlhausen, who's on the roster at quarterback from Houston Lamar. You've got some guys like that on the roster, and sure, they've got prototype size and they've got pedigree written all over them, but at least give it a try. You never know. It wouldn't hurt to at least give it a look.
I would have to. I mean, I've watched him play, and the guy is so dynamic and playing against top-notch, competition. I haven't seen anybody be able to stop him yet.
Well, and no one's really figured out how because, and I don't want to overstate it, but there's really not a good way to stop it because no matter what you do, it's a read and react, so they've already got a plan in place to decipher what you have. You either have to disguise extremely, extremely well, which, teams like Lake Travis, they can do that. That's why they win so many 4A titles. Now they have a chance to win a 5A one this year. You either have to disguise really well or you just have to out-athlete the team. You have to be able to cover their wide receivers for 7, 8, 9 seconds. That's a really long time. I don't know if there's anyone out there that can cover Ross and Darian Flowers for 7, 8, 9 seconds. It's really tough to do. If you can do one of those two things, you can definitely slow this offense down. It's not like they're unbeatable. They lost in the playoffs last year. If you can do one of those two things, you can beat them. Unfortunately, 99% of all teams are incapable of doing those.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you one other question too, and I know the state 7-on-7 championships take place this weekend down at College Station, and John Tyler had such success on the national level here just this past weekend or so. How often does that translate, that success in 7-on-7 on that level? How often does that success translate into a deep run in the playoffs?
You know, that's a good question. I get that one just about as often as I get who's going to be on the cover next year. I get that question a lot from fans because 7-on-7 has become so popular in the off season. My answer to this always has been, always will be, it can at times be an indicator, but it's certainly not a given. For example, Lake Travis has fared very well in the past in state 7-on-7. They've also fared very well in, 11-man football in the actual football season. DeSoto has fared very well in 7-on-7. They've also done very well in 11-man. Even in the small school ranks like Melissa and Salina, those are two schools that have done well in 7-on-7 in the past, and they've also done well in the field. However, there's a lot of other examples, and I won't name those poor teams, but they've done great in 7-on-7, and they've been middling to average teams when we actually get to the football season. The common indicator is less about how good you are in 7-on-7 as is what kind of talent you can put on the field in that. Because remember, your head coach, he can't coach that, and people say, well, they coach from the sidelines anyways, but rules state the high school head coach cannot be involved in the coaching of those teams. So it's mainly going to see how kids are policing themselves. If you get a group of guys out there who look motivated, who are fired up and ready to play hard, and they look like they really care and they're putting in the time in the off season, that's a really good thing. I mean, that's what you want to see translate to the field once you get on later in the season. In John Tyler's case, they're obviously exceptionally good 7-on-7 this year. And with the talent they were able to roll out to the field, and they looked like they were really motivated, I'd say those are great indicators for success. But it's not a guarantee, just a possible indicator.
Okay. You also had an article on the website this week on TexasFootball.com as we talked to Travis Stewart from TexasFootball.com that Greg Tepper wrote about returning starters, and does a team's number of returning starters dramatically impact its level of postseason success? What did you guys find?
Well, the number of returning starters in high school football is kind of a holy grail to a certain extent because in high school football, there's so many key factors that can push a team up or down. And a lot of it can be, well, not only your returning starters, but which starters are you returning. But I think on average, the teams that had more returning starters were better. They weren't, obviously way off the charts. If you have 15 coming back as opposed to 5, we're not talking like a 10-win difference. But there is a notable difference, and that shouldn't surprise us because teams that play a lot of juniors and sophomores, for them, there's no substitute for actual Friday night experience under the lights. I mean, once you actually get out there and get some time as a junior, get your feet wet, there's no adjustment period for you as a senior besides just kind of morphing into a leadership role. There's no adjustment period for you as a senior. You're already ready. You know what goes into it. You know what kind of hard work it takes, especially for teams that go deep into the playoffs. If you go into the regional finals or state semifinals, the juniors and sophomores who are playing real minutes on that team, I mean, they recognize all the hard work that went into that. They saw the seniors, and they saw all the time and effort they had to put in to get to that point. And so then that precedent is already set for the following off season. So in short, it makes a difference. It's not a huge, overwhelming tidal wave difference, but it does make a difference.
I did notice, too, in the article that Greg wrote that they said that the experience on offense seemed to mean more than the experience on defense did. That seems to make sense, though.
Yeah, I agree with that statement because it's just, in high school football, offenses have become advanced enough that a lot of defenses out there don't really have a prayer. You hope you can get 2 or 3 stops in a game, help maybe hold them to a field goal another time or two, and then you just hope you can get to 35 or 40. And it's going to be, it's just kind of like it was with the wing tee. I mean, defenses really didn't have a great chance. If an offense was good at the wing tee or the slot, then, that was it. You just hoped you could grind it out, maybe force a fumble or two, and then you hoped you could score. You can outscore them, and I think it's the same way here. So in a team like, for example, John Tyler, which fits both the returning starters and the returning offensive starters, for a team like that where you've got 3 primary juniors between the 2 wide receivers and Ward at quarterback who have now played together, all those juniors, had all offseason 7-on-7, and then now starting this year, those guys have essentially been throwing together for close to 500 consecutive days now. And when you get to that point, that's a lot of experience to put out there against a team maybe where some of the defenses haven't seen as much of each other, or it's just hard to stop those kind of kids.
Yeah. I guess the better question when you talk about John Tyler is how much of a difference does having a new head coach take over all that returning talent make this year?
Ultimately, that's probably, and I'll speak honestly, that may be what pushes them out of the top preseason spot. I mean, John Tyler was a pretty good-looking choice for number one, and then that coaching change happened. Now, that's absolutely no indictment on the new coaching staff there at all, but anytime there's a coaching change, there's just a certain degree of uncertainty there. It could be the best coaching staff in the world, and it may not mesh with the kids, or it may take a year to mesh with the kids. I mean, I felt like that was fairly common. So we pushed them down a couple spots. They still stayed in the top 5, and they're still going to be really, really good. In this case, with this kind of offense, with this kind of talent, I would think whatever coaching staff comes in, especially one that's very familiar with the John Tyler legacy, like the one we have right now, is anytime you got an offense like that, I would think the first thing you do is when you step in, to a certain extent, you step aside. You want to make sure that the offense doesn't change a whole bunch because you're already very successful. They have some tweaks to make because, again, they didn't win a state title last year, so there's obviously a few things you can change and improve. But for the most part, there's a system in place that's been successful. Learn that, embrace it, and keep moving along.
Travis Stewart from Dave Campbell's Texas Football and TexasFootball.com. One other question. I know it's an exciting time right now for the Texas A&M Aggies. They're at Media Days at SEC down in Birmingham right now. And I just wanted to get your take on how you thought Sumlin and the Aggies handled themselves in their first introduction to 1,100 media members there in Birmingham.
Now, there was a question there, and there was a sub-question there. The question is how the Aggies handled themselves. I thought they did spectacularly. I thought Coach Sumlin did a very good job. I thought guys like Sean Porter, who were able to step up and answer all those questions, I thought he did a really good job handling that incredible crush. I think the sub-question there is what did we take out of it? And I think the Aggies, to a certain extent, saw a glimpse of what's in the future, that even though they're glad to be there, and I think the other SEC schools are glad to have them there, I think it's a good fit in that way, that the media that's used to covering X, Y, Z, and a lot of these guys are from those states, SEC states, they're not going to be as forthcoming with the generosity. They're either going to play objective or they're going to give you a hard time. And yesterday, they worked the Aggies over pretty good. I mean, they essentially sat there and told them and said, you don't have a quarterback that's worth a hoot. And, I mean, to a certain extent, they're right. They have good quarterbacks, just none that are tested. Media guys sat there and said, you don't have any quarterbacks. You don't have any defensive line. You were average last year when you were supposed to be really good. You have a brand-new head coaching staff, and you have a style of offense that traditionally fails in the SEC. How do you think you're going to do anything? That was essentially the message that was relayed all day. I don't think that's what the A&M coaches, players, and even the fan base were expecting. And if they weren't, I mean, they're going to have to get used to that a little bit because, the legend is that the British press are the hardest press in the world, that they're the ones that throw out the most spicy comments, they ask the toughest questions. Well, the SEC beat writer media can give them a run for their money. If A&M and Missouri go out there and they're bad, I mean, the media's not going to give them a free pass. Next year at Media Days and every week they're going to ask them, well, how do you think you're going to stop this Alabama team? And it's going to be asked just like that.
Yeah.
So,
be careful what you wish for, basically, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly what it is. Exactly.
All right. Hey, it's great talking to you. We loved having you on, Travis, and we look forward to talking to you every Wednesday about everything that's going on with Texas football. Again, the website is TexasFootball.com. The new fall magazine is out with all the football stuff that's going on as well, and we look forward to talking to you every week.
I love these afternoons, Brian. I appreciate you.
Good deal. That's Travis Stewart from Dave Campbell's Texas Football and TexasFootball.com on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.